This is Forge Rats, an Ironsworn Starforged podcast. Hello friends, Anderson here, welcome to Forge Rats. Prep is play in Ironsworn and in Starforged, and that's the stage we're still in. We have a character, we've met Echo Mantis Sedano, the genetically modified and technologically augmented relic of the past pre-Exodus super soldier generation, and we've established our truths. So we have gained some insights into the specifics of our universe. In this next and final stage of the preparation exercises, we will be fleshing out a sector and some locations within that sector to serve as a backdrop for our initial adventures. Step 1 of this is to choose a starting region. Our options are the Terminus, the relatively settled part of the Forge, the Outlands, which is the area of recent expansions where settlements are more scattered, or the Expanse, where we haven't really fully settled yet and where only a few bold pioneers delve around in the far-flung reaches. Now, I haven't really made many choices myself so far, and I don't intend to start now because I want to hand this over to the dice. So I'm going to assign a span of dice 6 results to each. 1 to 2 is the Terminus, 3 to 4 is the Outlands, and 5 and 6 is the Expanse. Let's see where we go. That's a 5, so we'll start in the Expanse. If you're ready to face the dangers of lonely exploration within uncharted space, start here. I am very ready. So we will start there. Now that we know where we are, we can determine the number of settlements that are for us to take a look at. Doesn't mean they're the only settlements that are present in the sector, but those are the 2 that we will generate in this exercise. And since we are in the Expanse, the table that determines the amount of settlements tells us that we have to flesh out 2 of them. 1 on a relatively high level, and 1 in a bit more detail. Before we do that though, let's give our sector a name. Unsurprisingly, there is a table for that. So we roll a percentage die, and we roll it twice. 1 for the prefix and 1 for the suffix. 71, that is the outer. I noted down on the sector design sheet that I have printed out in front of me. And since we're in the Expanse, outer couldn't be more fitting. Let's see what outer we are dealing with here. 29, drift. So in the outer drift sector, at the very edge of currently settled forge space. Let's give our 2 settlements that we want to take a look at some details. Unsurprisingly, we also have a rather voluminous set of tools to help us there. We have settlement name, location, population, authority, and settlement project oracles that we can use to flesh out an amount of details that'll give us a better understanding of what we're looking at here. Let's make a start by giving the settlement a name. 25, Farpoint. Apparently the dice have understood the ins and outs of the Expanse and have decided to provide us with very fitting naming results today. I like it. Let's see where Farpoint is located and what amount of population we're looking at. I'll be rolling on the location table first. 18, it is a planet-side settlement, which means we'll also have to take a look at the planet later. But first we determine the amount of people living in Farpoint. That's another percentage roll. 87, according to the Expanse column of the table, that is thousands. Okay, that's a big one actually. Going by the name Farpoint and the size, that kind of makes me think that it's a resupply stop and layover point and base of operations for people going deeper into the outer drift or even deeper into the Expanse. So maybe the outer drift is something of a funnel for explorers, and Farpoint is their nexus point, their safe haven where they come to trade stories and repair their ships. Let's take a look at what the local authority is like. 03, there is none, or it's completely lawless. Okay, so it is shaping up to be a place where authority is coming from a might makes right sort of place, where I could imagine there are individual groups that affect how things are run, but there is no central authority that anyone yields to. So this is the outer edge of civilization where government is something to scoff at, and the majority of the people that are drawn to here are individualistic to the extent that they will band together for survival but reject any effort to impose on them beyond that. It's the outermost settled edge of even the already wild frontier that marks the limits of human civilization. I think that's already quite evocative. Definitely brings to mind a bunch of imagery from places like Mos Eisley or Tortuga Island, that sort of thing. Let's take a look at the current settlement projects. We are invited to roll up 2 of them. First one is 11, Black Market. Why am I not surprised? And what else? 66, Salvage. Yeah, that makes sense. Explorers coming back with their finds, their prospecting, but also maybe, depending on what planet we're on, we have ruins. Perhaps we have a remnant of ancient or Exodus technology that crashed here or existed here. We'll have to see what the planetary details are. I think I'd like to also roll up a settlement trouble just to get an idea of what we're going to run into when we get there. That's probably at some point after our initial inciting incident that we have to play through once we start actually engaging with the story of Echo. So what settlement trouble is there? 31, feuding factions. Okay, well, yeah, it does form a nice picture, doesn't it? A lawless place, a black market, nobody's in charge, everyone wants a stake. The feuding factions could be representative of attempts to bring the settlement under control, maybe even by outside forces, maybe by monetary intervention of the clans that are the ruling force of power in the Terminus and potentially the Outlands. Perhaps they have dispatched mercenaries or they're backing certain factions to try and create some kind of puppet rulership there. Perhaps there's also local gangs that are feuding over their shares of the black market and whoever is backing them. It's definitely an interesting scenario to dive into. Maybe that's the one that we're going to zoom in on because it really makes a nice picture. Well, not exactly nice, but engaging. Let's take a look at the other settlement here before we get to take a look at the planets. And the second settlement name is 43, Last Hope. Wow, that name alone combined with its location is already quite evocative and makes me think of some doomsday cult that upped and left the Terminus and migrated to the very edge of space to some ancient ruin and settled down to wait for the end, but let's see what we're getting. We once more determine a location. 59. This one is orbital. So we also have a planet to orbit, which means we can generate ourselves 2 planets. And the population? 33. Dozens. There are dozens of us. That makes me think it's even farther out there than even Farpoint is. And it's more out of the way. Perhaps we need to take that into account when determining passages later on as well, where Last Hope might be the one that is a bit harder to locate, whereas Farpoint has an established route leading to it. Let's figure out the authority in Last Hope. 59 is unyielding. The image that this is some kind of doomsday cult with a very rigid authoritarian leadership kind of solidifies at this point. Let's see what the current projects is that they're working on. 58, pacifism. Oh, that would go in line with a religious theme. Let's hope we don't roll up warfare next. 07, archaeology. So this probably is a cult that came out here and pursues some doom-saying insight or perhaps even some hopeful message to do with a forebear precursor location or maybe even something to do with the ascendancy. And a pacifist, and I wonder how far that goes. Would they hire someone to deal with their problems if they run into remnants in one of their ruins that they're delving? Could be an adventure hook for us. Let's go looking for trouble. Settlement trouble, to be exact. 39, hostile life forms. Okay, our pacifists have a problem with hostile life forms. It's probably stifling their progress a little bit. Right. Consider me intrigued. Like, both of these sounds really nice and cohesive. I don't know if I just got lucky with the die roll results, but both of these really immediately shape up like a very classic sort of sci-fi picture. It's very evocative. It's very... I can picture these places on a sketch level already. And I can also picture a bunch of mischief we can get up to by just showing up there and engaging with the local scene. Let's take a look at the planets. We have several planet oracles. The first one is to determine what type of planet we are dealing with. Let's roll up the planet location for Farpoint first. 13, it's a desert world. Okay, so Mos Eisley is definitely deeply entrenching itself in my mental imagery now. We don't have name oracles for this, but we have a list of suggestions that we can potentially pick from. I think going with our general theme, especially for Farpoint and its lawless nature, we'll call it Desolation. So if you're recently uprooted from the Terminus and you want to try your luck in the Expanse and you make your way to the Outer Drift, the first thing you will run into is Desolation. That sounds quite perfectly fitting. Let's see what kind of atmosphere we have here. It would be kind of logical if it was at least life-affirming in some way, so having it be extremely toxic, we might need to come up with a better reason for why this settlement is here as well. But let's give it to the dice. I'm getting a 96, which makes it ideal. Okay, that explains why Farpoint exists here. So, probably very good location on the nav charts, but also just a good place to sustain human habitation. Let's give ourselves an idea about the amount of life outside of the Farpoint settlers that we are expected to encounter here. 48, scarce. So there is a remainder of life. Perhaps some of it has gone extinct, but we do have some scattered pockets of biology. And beyond that, I guess we'll see when we get there. So observed from space, planet-side features, another couple of categories for these planets. Oracle categories, that is. I will get to when we go there. All right, let's do the same for Last Hope. What kind of world are we orbiting? 91, this is a shattered world, a world sundered by cataclysmic destruction. We're presented with another list of potential names that we can pick from or come up with our own. Since we have desolation as a name theme, maybe whoever named these first was trying to go for a bit of a Here Be Dragons branding, so we're going to call this one Torment. And if it's a world that was sundered by a cataclysm, perhaps this is what the inhabitants of Last Hope came to study. Perhaps they foresee a similar destruction happening to the rest of the Forge, and they are looking to gain insights into how to prevent it. That could be a thing. Be surprised if this had a livable atmosphere, so let's give it a roll. I think, yeah, we need to roll 100 to make it breathable. 65. It has no atmosphere anymore. Let's see what the likelihood is that we get any life on this one. 85. Extinct. That's on the cusp of actually having some life, because that would be 86, but we're not getting quite over that one. So whatever life was here, it went extinct. And the planet-side feature table also provides us with some potential broken cities and phantom visions of the past as part of our forays on this broken planet side, should we ever get down there. Okay, so the Outer Drift is quite a cheerful sector with desolation and torment. It's planets that we currently have in focus. But Farpoint I like. That's a place I would like to have Echo visit. Pretty much first off. So I think that's the one I would like to zoom in on. We can also generate stars if we would like to know the nature of the primary stars that the settlements and planets orbit. Give us a bit of scenery, but I think we can leave the scenery and fleshing out to setting the scene for when we actually reach our locations. So let's skip that for now. The next step is equally optional. If it helps us, we can make a sector map. And, well, since this is an audio format, I will sort of make a rough relation to each other map for myself, but it's not going to be particularly important or reflective of anything. But if you would picture a map to give you an idea of where things are in relation to each other, then Farpoint would be relatively to the center, while Last Hope would be way off in the corner. And what else is out there we may discover in due time. So, for now, in terms of mapping, that's about as rough as it gets. Passages is something we need to set next, which is a not quite as perilous previously mapped set of coordinates that spacers can rely on to travel to a point in a sector reliably. And since we're in the Expanse, we have one passage, and the stipulation for passages is that they can either connect two settlements or connect the settlement to the edge of the sector map leading to another sector. And I think that's the passage we are going to draw. We're going to draw a passage from the Farpoint settlement and desolation planet to the edge of the sector, and we're going to draw it away from the direction in which Last Hope is located. So in terms of charted territory, Farpoint is pretty much the end of it, and if you then want to strike out and meet the pacifist lunatics that are hovering out there over a shattered world, you're pretty much on your own, and you need to undertake an expedition. Whereas following a passage is a different move, is just set a course, which is a one roll to see whether we can arrive there safely. Now, zooming in on a settlement is the next step, and we will do this for Farpoint. That does actually invite us to take the first look at the settlement and generate the settlement trouble. I've already kind of preempted that by zooming in maybe a little bit more than the rules intended, but I feel like to get a better idea of what I'm working with here, I do want to know these things as well for the places that we don't zoom in on as much. So zooming in on Farpoint, as a first look, we roll up 2 results. First one is 12. It is built from scrap metal. That rather fits the vibe of not having a central authority and pretty much just growing organically as a conglomerate of anti-authoritarian individualists. See what else we get. 44. Intimidating defenses. Okay. Who are they defending against, though? There's barely anything out here. Are they afraid that the clans are going to send a fleet one day and try to take their freedom away? Or is there maybe, in this scarce life that is out there, some enormous threatening creature, like a towering monstrosity the size of a mountain that occasionally shambles in the direction of Farpoint and needs to be discouraged from coming in closer and stepping on it by some laser blasts to the face? Curious. But that is what it is. Maybe we'll find out what the intimidating defenses are for and live to regret it. Since we're zooming in here, we can also add a couple of planet-side features for desolation, so we can flesh out the location around Farpoint a little bit. First one is an 8 engulfing sandstorms, and the second one is 76 towering rock formations. Sounds like a pretty classic Outer Drift desert planet to me. Now, since we have zoomed in on Farpoint as our main focus for this sector, we will also create our local connection, which is the next step in Farpoint. And the way this works is we assume that we have the strong hit result on the move make a connection, which means we create a connection, we give them a role and a rank, and whenever our connection aids us on a move closely associated with their role, we'll add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. Now we'll have to see how we actually work that into our story, and that also depends on the role a little bit, because the way I would like to set it up is that Echo is still on the Titan, this Exodus ship that she departed with when the game starts, and that this connection comes into play somehow either as part of whoever finds her there, or as whoever takes her in once we arrive in Farpoint. So it very much depends on who and what we're dealing with here. Let's give them a role to start with. Maybe that'll sharpen our view a little bit. 76, they are a scavenger located in a settlement that it specializes on salvage. So the dice are really being quite auspicious today. I like it. And then it gives us the option that this scavenger is somebody who perhaps comes across this Exodus ship once it manifests back in, well, for lack of a better term, real space, and just appears here in the expanse, and the scavenger is the lucky one that finds it and also ends up finding Echo. Maybe that's what happens. I shall note the roll down on the connection sheet that I have in front of me here. Next up, we'll have to give the connection a rank that represents the challenge of advancing the relationship. So is this a very important person with many, many connections and we're just one little cog in the wheel? Or I guess if it's somebody who has actually got the gumption to salvage an Exodus ship, that's probably somebody who commands a fair amount of resources. So I'm gravitating towards at least formidable, but could also be extreme or epic. I think we may just give that a likelihood. So I would say it is likely that it's formidable, which means 26 and plus on a roll. That's what it is. And if I roll something else, then we will upgrade. 21. Okay, so this scavenger is quite connected and quite resourceful, in which case I shall deem it likely, 26 plus, that they are extreme and not epic. 86. Okay, they are extreme. Their location is Farpoint, except that is probably not the location when we meet them. And now we can provide them with a few more extra details, starting with first look. Let's say we roll twice on this one. 63 is scarred, so whoever they are, they've seen some things. And what else do we have? 90, weathered. So they've been on this desert planet for quite a while then. That puts me to mind to more of an older person, potentially. Especially if they're also in that position of authority that we assume they're in. Let's give a goal to our new friend or potential recurring enemy here. Doesn't have to be a friend, but it's likely that we start out on that foot, or at least on a positive note. And the goal is 45, to obtain an object. This gives me an idea that I'm toying around with in regards to the Exodus ship that Echo is currently located on before we start play. Maybe it's not a coincidence that our connection here is seeking out that Exodus ship. Perhaps it's some kind of pre-Exodus piece of technology. Maybe even that experimental FTL drive, that Mirage engine that we are aware of since we've established our truths. The thing that allowed us to escape the religious persecution in our home. So maybe the presence on this particular Exodus ship for this particular well-connected scavenger is no coincidence, and the object that they want to obtain is a very specific thing. We do not have to flesh that out now, but we need to keep it in mind. Lastly, we can have a look at a revealed character aspect. Let's reveal one of them to begin with. 16, charismatic. Okay, sort of a mentor image emerges from me, some potential, perhaps really older person that is able to take Echo under their wing. Now we do need a name, and we have 3 pages of tables to roll on. Last time I had it, so a roll of 1 to 50 was female and 51 plus was male, and a match was identifying as neither. Let's turn around. Let's make 1 to 50 male this time and 51 plus female and see where it goes. We'll leave the match result as is. 25, Creed. Ooh, bit of a cowboy name here going on at first association. Maybe it's a rugged, white-bearded scavenger leader with a sort of frontiersman hat. Let's give Creed a family name. 21, O'Brien. Creed O'Brien. Let's see what Creed O'Brien becomes, whether he'll be a regular patron or associate, or is just a very infrequent side character. All we know is it'll be the first one that we have any meaningful interaction with, and that will be a part of our story. And whether we make any actual progress on this extreme progress track to turn our connection with Creed into an actual bond remains to be seen. Now, the second to last step is to introduce a sector trouble on another oracle table. We roll again. And we get a 7. Bounty hunters search for an infamous fugitive. Let's hope that isn't us. Well, actually, infamous fugitive, that kind of puts a stop to that. So there has to be some infamous character out and about in the outer drift. And maybe we can run afoul of them, or maybe even find a common goal with them. We'll see. Step 11 is finalizing the starting sector. Giving it a name, we already done that because I do like to start with that. And we need to determine whether there is a controlling power for the sector. The faction came to the forefront during the truth exercise. And while there are factions that we became aware of, we also determined, due to the nature of where we are, that they will not have control here. You have no power here, clans. So that's pretty much it. We have the outer drift. We know that the Titan, the Exodus ship, will materialize here in our first play session. That will also serve as our inciting incident, by the way. So not only is it our background vow, but I think what will happen is that Creed O'Neill and his salvaging crew will board the Titan, find Echo, and depending on the die results that we get and whatever unfolds from there, maybe they run into trouble or they make us do something for them, depending on how our initial contact goes. They might recruit us, they might put us to work for them to repay them facilitating our relocation to Farpoint. I think there's enough here to determine that the inciting incident just unfolds as we play. So in terms of beginning our adventure, that can happen sort of in the middle of things. And if all else fails, we have a table to roll on that might give us an idea of what Creed is currently invested in beyond salvaging the Titan that he might need our assistance with. So we are very well set and ready to go, and go we shall. The prep is play part is complete, and we are about to enter regular play. From now on, this will all also be available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Podbean. The only thing I am struggling a little is the initial episode I recorded, the truths and character creation exercise, because the sound on it, since I rushed into it a bit too much, is not up to standard. So there may be a scenario where that one is not on the podcast app, since they're audio only and the audio is quite bad, but it will stay up on YouTube. And I've also provided a summary of the truths in a short bonus episode, so we can always refer back to the truth there. And everything else, especially about Echo, will be revealed during play regardless. So the few cornerstones points that I have determined we have summarized in this episode already, and that makes it somewhat tolerable if that first not so great sounding recording eventually goes away. So that's where we're at. We're about to start playing. Episode 1 is about to go up. I very much look forward to it. I thank you very much for tuning in. I'll catch you next time, and bye for now.